Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. As we wrap up our third week of our COVID-19 Power Lunch, we wanted to take a break from the Paycheck Protection Program and other legislation to provide guidance for business owners and leadership teams on how to move forward and prepare for reentry. Joining us for the discussion is Dave Fechtman, CEO of Velocity Advisory Group. Dave will share insights on what he's gained from serving as an executive coach to Fortune 500 companies, mid-market lenders, and small business owners. Dave, welcome. Please describe the journey that the leaders have gone through as they've navigated through this unprecedented crisis.
Hey, Aaron, thanks for having me. I think it all started on March 12th, essentially the day that everything was accelerated. That day, if you can remember, was when the stock market plummeted, the sports leagues all canceled their schedules. For us, a lot of our clients canceled anything that involved travel. And it all happened very abruptly. And when I think back in my career, I can't remember a day that was more fast moving than March 12th. And then it quickly came to a screeching halt. So, companies were forced to make very quick decisions. And then they moved into this level of uncertainty, not knowing really what to do. And most companies were moving quickly towards remote workforces and getting everyone ready to be productive in a new way, in a new environment. And now we're seeing perseverance and resilience taking hold, and people are beginning to think about what this new normal may look like.
Yeah, I think I just counted yesterday that it's been 7 weeks since, or this is week 7 of kind of the quarantine. And I remember that day because it was unbelievable as I watched all the sports being canceled, everybody moving to remote, stock market crashing. It was kind of a crazy week, to say the least. But as things have kind of shifted, what have you seen the most during this pandemic in the form of business and leadership, of a shift maybe in culture or a shift in how they're doing things?
Yeah, another good question. I think that one of the things that has been most obvious is that people are falling into one of two camps. They're either working harder than they ever have before, or things have slowed down dramatically. And in either event, and sometimes even within one organization, you'll have teams of people working very hard and diligently and trying to navigate through this situation, and others that are under capacity. So that's definitely one of the biggest things that I've seen. People's boundaries have been blurred now that everyone's working from home. I'm hearing things like their workday starting at 6 a.m. and not wrapping up till 6 or 7 p.m. People are having to stop what they're doing with a client and help their student with third grade math, which is a lot harder than client work, I imagine. And the other thing that I think is maybe a positive of all this is expectations and standards have shifted. So before, if a dog would bark in the background or a kid was screaming in the background, that was really stressful and created a lot of anxiety for everybody involved. And today I'm starting to see the tolerance is a little bit different, and people are much more understanding of everyone else's circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, whoever thought we'd be doing this from a Zoom or a good webinar from our houses, right? You never thought this would be our living room or our bedroom. But it has definitely become the new normal, and you're right. It seems people are giving a lot more grace with understanding that people are home with their families or loved ones and animals, and so kind of giving that, hey, I'm glad you're just here to help me. I'll kind of ignore what's going on in the background, which is actually probably a good thing.
It's a little refreshing, right?
It is, and yes, you're right. It is kind of hard to stop and help with the third grade math, but I have heard the same thing, that the boundaries have been really hard, because if you're not used to working from home, it never seems to somewhat turn off, right? But on the other side of it, as you mentioned before, some people aren't as busy, which isn't necessarily a good thing either, because pipelines have dried up or work has gone down because of the shutdowns and everything. So it's kind of a blurry line between which is better.
Yeah, I'm noticing the people that are working very hard are grateful for that, and the people that work is slowed down. They're in many cases they're looking ways to reinvent themselves, looking inwardly inside their business as opposed to outwardly, and what can they do to improve processes or declutter workspaces, all the way to finding new innovative solutions, new products, new services, and whatnot. So those that are seeing a decrease in work of volume are in many instances looking for improvement.
No, that's a really good point. Kind of reinventing yourself, which is, or the way you do business, which is pretty cool. So what do you think is on the top of minds of leaders today? What are they the most worried about or focused on?
Well, obviously leaders come in different shapes and sizes, but I think the one thing that all leaders are looking for, regardless of who they're leading and what they're leading, is just some certainty. One of the biggest things that is plaguing corporate America right now, and really the globe, is just high levels of uncertainty. And we keep talking about this phrase, the new normal, and whatever that means. What is the new normal? I think that that's going to be vernacular that we're going to be using for a long time. So leaders, I notice, are trying to figure out just something they can grasp onto, that they can tether to, and look for a way to move forward and build some confidence and some alignment in their organizations.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, from this, do you see a lot of changes being made in cultures of companies or the way they do business, especially in, kind of the forcing of, hey, you have to go work remote, where they used to have a lot of anxiety, or business owners had a lot of anxiety about that?
Yeah, I do. And I know one of our larger clients, they're looking at a 51% or greater remote workforce. They're hyper focused on not putting themselves in a situation where they're going to be handicapped or hindered if something like this ever happens again. So they're going to stay virtual, and at a minimum, really consider a hybrid approach. Yeah, I think that some of the benefits that come out of this, through this reinvention and this new direction, is going to be the attraction of talent, and being able to use this remote environment to attract people all over the world, where historical biases would want them to be in the same city, or come into the office from 9 to 5 every day.
Yeah, certainly a lot more creativity has to go into meetings, touching base with people, having phone calls. That when it became a necessity, it seemed like it fell right in line. Of course, not without its own hiccups, but again, necessity was the issue, and people are able to be doing it for the past few weeks. And there, I would expect, like you said, some companies are going to have to look at, hey, how do we keep this going if people want to stay remote? How do we have some sort of hybrid that would work for both our workforce and for our companies? So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes to go back to adjust to the new normal, in other words. And like the word fluid, I think the new normal is going to be that vernacular that we're going to hear for a while.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So any suggestions for leaders on how they should conduct themselves as they lead their teams during this pandemic, that then flows back into probably a slow reentry into like the new normal?
Yeah, what we're finding, the leaders that we're working with, there is no consistency as well around the way that their employees are dealing with this. So in some instances, you may have people that live by themselves. You may have people that have a large family and that they're all sharing internet space with and workspace from. But one of the things is that the leader really should lean into listening, showing empathy, and really trying to understand what each of their employees are faced with. One way to do that is to have one-on-one meetings and schedule those, maybe every week, every other week, just for 15 minutes to 30 minutes with their direct reports, to really try to figure out what's going on, what circumstances is that person struggling, is that person doing okay, and what can that leader do to eliminate barriers and help make that teammate as productive as possible.
Yeah, I know one of the things that we've done internally is we have teams that are working on either different projects or different buckets of work. And so some of us are having daily team huddles via Skype just for 10 minutes and doing nothing but fun, whether it's a game, whether it's just checking on each other, one to try and stay as connected as possible, but just making sure that we still feel that team environment, even though we're spread out among the county.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, Aaron, about culture. That is absolutely critical right now, and it will be in this new normal as well. It's going to be important that that everything should be up for debate, whether it's the way that we collaborate, the way that we work in a hybrid model, maybe in the future, or back in a co-located space. But everything should be up for debate on ways to improve, to re-engage everybody, and frankly, to let everyone feel safe. Some people are going to be uncomfortable coming back into the workplace and not, we're being programmed to think social distancing. We're being programmed to think not to shake hands anymore. There's a lot of new normals that are going to be out there, but having fun and that sense of camaraderie shouldn't be jeopardized in this new approach.
No, definitely not. Yeah, it is very weird not to shake hands, or even when you see friends, hug them and think about, oh wait, I have to stay 6 feet apart. So in the new business, it'll be very interesting to see how that kind of works. So how are things like crisis fatigue and social isolation, how is that impacting leaders? Because I know that, those are kind of two very different phrases that, as again, we're going kind of onto week 7 of quarantine, stay-at-home orders. Like you said, people want certainty. They want an ending, an end date, a due date, for a better word, of like, hey, when are we going to be back to doing things normally? What is that? How is this impacting leaders?
Aaron, I think that most leaders in this current situation have not been able to really shut down. They haven't had the luxury of unplugging. Likely, many of them are working through the weekends. Definitely, we talked about earlier, extended hours, either beginning of the day or at the end of the day, or both. So, there's a phrase, it's lonely at the top, and I think that that's probably doubly true when that leader is having to make really critical and hard decisions and doing it in a vacuum, doing it without, being able to walk down the hall and talk to one of their colleagues. So I think that I think that it's a real thing. I think the social isolation, the crisis fatigue is probably going to hit the leaders as much as it will the employees, because when things go back to the new normal, the leaders are still going to have to be on. They're still going to have to provide vision. They're still going to have to provide direction. So they're probably the one group that's not going to get a break through all of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually just speaking with someone about that this morning, that, as you feel like, hey, I should have this vacation coming up or this time off coming up, but you somewhat feel guilty for even taking it because there's nowhere to go and you're home all the time. So taking time off to stay at home doesn't even have an appeal. So it is interesting that you're right, the leadership, it's hard to have that downtime to kind of re-energize. They don't seem to have gotten that.
Yeah, it's and I think that everyone needs to be more understanding and use grace with each other now and into the future, because even when we are moving out of this and quarantine is lifted, I still think that there is going to be a lot of stress and uncertainty out there, and leaders are human beings too, and they need to be a little bit more rope and more understanding if they're acting naughty or not, not being the best stewards of things.
No, that definitely makes sense. So what do you think 3 things that leaders can do to prepare for this reentry?
Well, I think it starts, hopefully the leaders will have paid attention to their employees, but I still think that they need to understand what the needs are and the wants are of all their employees. We've spent a lot of time talking about that, but that's likely there'll be some great ideas that people will have thought of during this, and helping understand what those are will be valuable. So that's one. I think the second one is really getting an understanding in what the needs and wants are of your customers. They need to really listen to their customers, interact with their customers, figure out what their fears and anxieties are, where their opportunities lie, and making sure that everyone stays client centric coming out of this, because if we have to move from that inward look back to outward look. And then I think this is important, and Aaron, you know, we do a lot of strategic planning and planning in general. I think it's critical that organizations do have a plan, that they're not winging it. And without the plan, I think that they're going to find, again, people not knowing exactly what to do and where to go. Having a plan will bring clarity for that leader, alignment, and help build some momentum towards what this new future state should look like.
No, I definitely think anxiety comes out of the uncertainty of things. There's a few people who definitely can love that. They like never knowing what's going to happen next. But it seems like a majority of, whether it's for your workforce or even part of your leadership structure, they like certainty. And this has been probably one of the most anxiety-ridden times, is uncertainty. How long will this last? When can we start back? And even today, as we sit here May 1st in the state of Florida, we're supposed to be reopening today. And so it's kind of like, what is that reopening looking like? How does it affect my business? How does it affect my personal life? So I think having a plan, and even if it's a few plans, plan A, plan B, plan C, because again, not knowing how things are going to be in each quarter, I kind of look at things as Q2, Q3, Q4, even next year, but having some sort of plan so you know how to pivot, because as we've learned in these past few weeks, things can turn within an hour. Right? So you never know what the news is going to bring. I've never seen anything like it. And one of definitely the things that we've said repeatedly over and over again is we're trying to be as fluid as possible based off of information coming out on sometimes an hourly or daily basis, and we just can't always have all the answers, and that's hard, really hard.
I like what you said about plan A, B, and C. I also think that things need to be more bite-sized.
Yeah.
It's important to not boil the ocean. And whether it be a 2-week sprint, or you're bringing clarity for the week or for the month, or on a specific goal or smaller task, I think that's really critical. I love having the plan A, B, and C, but I also like them being small and digestible.
No, that's really good, because it's hard to plan out for a year from now when you don't know what's going to be happening 2 weeks from now. But being able to pivot and not being so like, well, this is my plan, I can't, deviate from it, doesn't work in this environment today. Unfortunately, we just don't know where it's going to be. So, what is one coaching moment that you can think of that stands out during this crisis?
Yeah, I've coached a lot of people. We have clients in Canada and throughout the United States, and I have a lot of clients in the Northeast, and I have to say that my heart really goes out for a lot of them. And one leader in particular I coach in New York City, this guy's organization's been hit really hard. They've lost some people on their team too, and what I really appreciate about working with this person is his compassion, also his ability to flex to the different needs and match the moment, not the mirror, of what the people are what their needs are when he's interacting with them. And I'm finding that he's really approaching his organization 3 different ways. One is kind of a business as usual, because there are large populations of people that still want to have goals. They still want to wake up in the morning. They still want to drive quota and accomplish their tasks. You have the other end of the spectrum that really just need a lot of support, compassion, access to resources, understanding, flexibility. And then there's everybody in the middle that are juggling kids that are homeschooled and unfortunate, unusual circumstances. So he's created 3 different approaches to managing his team and his his organization, and that seems to be working really well. And one of the things that, not just him, but I really admire the resiliency that I'm seeing in the leaders that we get to work with. And I can't think of one exception where anyone's really just rolled over and just waved the white flag. Everybody's trying their hardest right now.
Yeah, no, that's really great, and it does show good resiliency and leadership, and even for those that are working with them, I know how much they appreciate it, even if they don't fully understand what they're having to do. And I think that's a really good point you said about the having the flexibility and understanding what's going on with their employees outside of work. Because I mean, we mentioned obviously schools have been closed. We don't know what summer plans are going to be, what camps are going to be available, what daycare. But in addition, people are also taking care of people who are not allowed to go outside or are afraid to go outside because they have low immune systems or more susceptible. If they got sick, it would be really bad. So some people are taking care of more than just their family. They may be taking care of their in-laws, their parents, or other close people that still need grocery shopping done, or things, or Target. I'm trying to think of different things of taking care of for them. So it can be very stressful, and helping to understand what your employees are going through is huge.
Yeah, and I'm envious of you all down in Florida because I think that you've approached this differently than other regions in the country have had to or have chosen to. But one of the things that I admire is everyone's really keeping their employees and their civilians, if you will, in top of mind. I'm noticing concessions to different jurisdictions, like what's the governor saying or what's our county's approach to this. So, but Florida seems to have gotten through this in a healthy and fairly safe way, all things considered.
Hopefully so. Hopefully we stay that way.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to say the least. So one last question for you, Dave, and it's kind of a big one. So what changes are businesses considering in the new normal that perhaps will be an everlasting effect?
Yeah, well, I think that the most obvious, and we've talked a little bit about it, is the workplace. I mean, what concessions can they make to make employees more comfortable, more productive? Um, uh, I think that is probably going to be the biggest outcome of this. Um, so that obviously that's one. I also think that our unemployment as a country went from 2% or 3% to tens of millions of people unemployed in the matter of a month.
Yeah.
So I believe that, and this is not a positive outcome of this, but I believe that expectations around employer and employee relations are going to change a lot. I think that it's going to impact salaries and the way that people are re-entering the workforce that are currently unemployed. So organizations that are poised to treat their employees well and have a vision for where they're going probably are going to be able to pick up some very talented people that are hungry to get back to work and ready for a new opportunity. So culture is going to matter more than ever in this new norm. I believe that organizations that are really employee focused and customer focused, that are not commoditizing their people, they're going to be winners, because people that currently have jobs but that are fearful that they don't like the direction of their company coming out of this, they're
Mhm.
going to be looking for new opportunities, and there's going to be a lot of that. And it's going to be quiet, it's going to be under the surface, so no one's going to really see it. And then they're going to see good people leaving their organization. So culture is going to matter. Um, a couple other things that are obvious: there may be a less capital available. There's a lot of discussions around the banks tightening up. So that may force a lot of the nice to haves to go by the wayside.
Yeah.
So organizations are going to have to find creative ways to add value and give their employees nice benefits, but maybe not in a monetary way.
Mhm. No, that's a good point. Yeah, if we can only have the crystal ball, and you read it all over the news of what will the economy look like a year from now, it's really, really hard to tell. And by industry, it's going to be really, really different, I think. I never thought that I would see the healthcare industry is impacted, not because of COVID-19, like being overwhelmed by patients, but just by what the shutdown did and having to reduce procedures, surgeries, patient visits, and all that stuff. I never thought I would see it suffer. So that's just one industry example that you're like, I thought they were solid and they weren't, because of how things can affect it. So it'll be really interesting to see as we pivot into this new normal, how this works for everyone. So I really want to tell
I've learned
Dave,
how to cut my own hair, Aaron.
huh?
I've learned how to cut my own hair. That's a great takeaway.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. the different things that we have, and that is a good example, things that we've gone without, right? That you could never imagine not getting your hair cut every 3 weeks, and here it is 7 weeks, and you're like, well, I'm cutting my own hair. So it'll be interesting to see how this all kind of plays out. But I think I really appreciate all your advice and things that you've seen, and I'm sure we'll probably have you back as we actually go back into reentry and figure out a few weeks from now or months from now what this all looks like, and how you said you can attract good and retain your talent, even if it's not in a monetary way. And I have heard from multiple people that how their employers reacted to this really gave them a telltale sign of what it was like to work for them. Because some employers put their head in the sand and they didn't want to deal with this, and some were very proactive. So I think as we kind of pivot to new normal, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think the leaders that bring clarity, confidence, and calm to the situation are going to be the ones that come out victorious on the other end of this. And there are going to be winners and losers. There are absolutely going to be winners and losers. It'll be impossible for that not to be the case. But if the folks that have stuck with us this long can remember clarity, confidence, and calm, those are the three things that leaders really need to bring, and their employees and their customers need of them.
Well, thank you. No, I really appreciate that, Dave, and I know everyone appreciated listening to you. And so we look forward to our next Power Lunch next Tuesday, and we'll have the topic released for that one. Again, every week we try and change on what we're talking about. And if you have any suggestions or things you want to hear about, please email us at info@jmco.com. And we've also included Dave's information as well on this webinar if you have any questions for him. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Aaron.